Today's video is going to be more like a render with me style video. I figured it'd be fun just to do a run-of-the-mill rendering beginning to end, a little more casual, in real time, so you can see me work through this. And if you want to follow along with today's tutorial, head on over to my website, willgibbons.com, pop your email address in that bar that you see on the top of the website, and then click sign up, and it will take you to the file vault where you can download today's project files, as well as project files for any other tutorial I've done on YouTube thus far. Now, I want to mention also, I recorded the process of me modeling this 3D model. If you're interested in watching that as well, I will link it up probably in the description as well as at the end of this video in case you're curious as to what my modeling process looks like. Don't judge me, I'm not that great, but it works. So what you see on screen here is what I'm going to teach you how to do in this tutorial. We're going to walk through creating all these materials, the lighting, everything. We've got some KeyShot Realcloth with some nice braided cable action going on here, and yeah, should be a lot of fun. Go ahead and unzip the folder, take the splittercable.step file, drag it into the KeyShot window, and take the default import settings. We're going to begin by blocking in our materials, and I'm going to go ahead and UV unwrap these cables so we can put some sort of a woven type texture, braided cable, that type of thing. So I'm going to right click and go to unwrap UV. First we need to add seams. If you're curious about what UV unwrapping is, why we're doing this, how it works, go ahead and click on one of these videos up above here. I've got an in-depth article as well as a couple of tutorials on my website as well about it. Really should answer pretty much all your questions about UV unwrapping. And we want to put this last seam on the bottom here to hide it. And we should be able to select each area and unwrap. I'll go ahead and mention one thing KeyShot doesn't do so great at is avoiding certain stretching and also twisting. You can see that these are kind of twisting around here. Not ideal, but it's really all we can do. So we're gonna take what we can get. I'm gonna unwrap the other two right now so we don't have to do that later. It's the same exact process, so just rinse and repeat here. If you really needed something to be, you know, consumer facing and you needed to ensure that no UVs were twisting around the cable here, I'd probably recommend using a tool that's a little better suited for it. You could probably do your unwrapping in Blender. The problem is when, you know, people point, you know, oh, just do this or that in Blender. When you're coming from a CAD application, unfortunately, getting NURBS data like step files in and out of a program like Blender or Cinema 4D or, you know, Max or Maya, they don't really play together well, unfortunately. So it's not something that you can just do easily. Let me find out, I already forgot if I did this one. So let's go ahead and go to textures and just put a simple Realcloth in here. Oops, change the material to Realcloth. If you're looking to take your KeyShot skills to the next level, then check out the KeyShot Rendering Masterclass. Inside, I share the exact process I've used and refined over the past 10 years to deliver renderings to some of today's most recognized brands. With over 15 hours of content broken into 100+ bite-sized, beginner-friendly videos, this is the most comprehensive KeyShot course available. When you enroll, you will learn how to turn a boring CAD model into beautiful photoreal images. Stop wasting time searching for tutorials on YouTube and fast-track your learning by enrolling in the KeyShot Rendering Masterclass. Click the link in the description below to learn more and see what other customers have to say about it. So it looks like this outer one was not done, so let's go ahead and do that one. And I'm saying that because it's the Realcloth requires UVs, and they're in here, but by default, they're not uniform. And you're gonna get stretching and stuff like that. So we're at least trying to make them look a little bit better using the unwrap tools in KeyShot. You really do need a dedicated tool that allows you to get into access more of the geometry to do proper UV unwrapping, I think. I don't know. I'm not a programmer. But this is better than nothing. Okay. So from here, we'll go ahead and dial this texture or material in just a little bit. Let's take it down to 1 millimeter. And I'm going to go for kind of a dark bluish color here. My dog groans when he's bored. You might hear him. And let's go for maybe, I don't know, kind of a teal color. I don't like the shape of this, so let's go to edit our weave pattern, and we'll bring the width up to 0.9 on both of these. That will close the gap between them. And it doesn't update in the real-time view, just in this thing here. We need to, I think we're going to take the tension up. I'll do 0.8 or 0.9 maybe, I don't know. So it's a little tighter weave, and then not round, but ribbon. We want ribbons here. There we go. It kind of just looks like a checkerboard, but when we get close, you can see there's actually a lot of detail in there. I just wish there was an easier way to make this detail more visible from a distance. Lighting will help with that, but for now, that's what we got. I'm gonna rotate these though, so they're not checkerboard looking. Let's go to angle under geometry and type in 45. So now it looks a little bit better. You can definitely see that our UVs are twisting around these tubes, but nothing we can do about that. That's fine. Grab this guy in the middle, the splitter, and let's go ahead and set this to a plastic. What am I gonna do? More of that kind of seafoam green, the teal color we were using before. What color was that? Let's find out. Let's make this a little bit more green. Maybe darker. There we go. Something like that. We'll throw that down here and then reuse it for that plastic part so we can coordinate a little bit. Looks a little bright. Roughness, we're going to go to 0.1. Make it a little more rubbery. Let's take this so the specular's not white. Let's go to like a grayish color. Okay, I think it's still a little on the light side. We may need to just darken it a bit. There we go. But our background's looking kind of gray and muddy. I know. We'll come back to that. Let's get the rest of this done. The metal parts here, pardon me, are going to be... We are going to use metal. Let's just use a coppery color. I always like copper. Just looks nice. And we'll give it a tiny bit of roughness. I know it looks kind of satiny here, but that's just because our environment is this. Our startup environment is too soft. Let's actually switch that out now so it's not confusing us. I'll go with this 2 panels tilted. Boom. So you can see immediately now things look a lot different. And this metal is too shiny. So let's take our roughness down to 0.05. I guess up to 0.025. We'll go ahead and use that same green accent on here. Actually, no, let's go something darker. Let's go to kind of a black. Let's go to 15%. Make sure it's a plastic. Go 0.05 on that too, maybe. And let's shift left click, shift right click to paste that onto these other parts here. Kind of coordinate those a bit. Those could be that greenish color too, just depends up to what you want. Oh, these guys, what color should they be? I don't think they need to be this color. I think it's gonna be too much the same, matchy. We will still put it into a plastic, kind of like white. I think white looks kind of fresh, right? So a little insider tip, 82%, that's the supposed kind of plastic white point. And it prevents your highlights from getting too bright. We can maybe go a little higher than that. It just depends on your lighting situation. I think overall it looks pretty good. I think these are looking too shiny though. I want to take these down. So take the spec down to about 80. And maybe the roughness goes from 0.05 to 0.1. So they're very kind of more rubber-like. It's looking pretty good overall. So we got the materials blocked in. Let's go ahead and play with our lighting in our environment, get that sorted. And I like these being smooth, but they're maybe a little too smooth. What happened? 0.05. You know what? I'm gonna go, I wanna make them almost look like a ceramic. That would be kind of fun. So we'll go 1.7, higher on the specular value. And then we can still probably take the roughness 0.01, just so they're not perfectly. You could also do this with like a metallic paint, play with that too. I think this is fine for now though. And I think these are too soft. Let's take this up to 0.01, 0.02. Okay. Last but not least, we may want to dial these in a little bit. What else do we have here for our roughness? Warp refractive index. So we can take the refractive index up to say 2 on both of these, which will help make it look a little shinier, which I want it to look a little shinier. I'm wondering if we need to darken this guy a little bit here. It's kind of standing out as a little too bright maybe. So I want those highlights to be like legible. See, I think that's too bright potentially. The other thing to keep in mind is this going to basically disappear when I make this a thumbnail size? That's something to always consider. Yeah, that's not too bad. What about smaller? I think it's still legible. I'm going to consider, I'm going to leave the camera angle, camera like focal distance. I think that's fine. Don't really, I don't want to do a bunch of depth of field. Maybe we'll do just a very small amount, because we don't need this up anymore. Let's try a little depth of field. On product shots, you really don't want a bunch of depth of field because, again, you want someone to be able to see the product. You're not trying to make it look artsy or, you know, mess with the scale. Let's try 50. Let's go to 80, 100. I want the tiniest bit of depth of field on here so it looks a little more realistic. Let's try 120. I think that's okay. We'll save a new camera there. And then let's make sure we're in product mode on our global illumination here. What about our background and our lighting? If we set our background color to white, now these are basically matching. That's no good. Also, are we going to go into photographic mode? Go to linear. Sometimes I like to suppress a little bit of the highlights here if I need to, or play with like contrast. Maybe drop the exposure a touch. I think I'm missing like a bit of a nice highlight up top. This whole thing's looking a little too flat. Definitely don't have any shadows underneath. One thing I'll point out, if we go to turn on occlusion ground shadows, kind of looks cool here, but then it's way too dark here, so we're not going to use that. I don't want to get into physical lights today, just we're going to play with the HDRI only. And I think what I need to do is just have a single highlight here, single pin. So I'm going to turn off these others. Let's add a new pin, bring it to the top. And actually I want it to hit the top maybe up here. That actually looks pretty nice. Can I make it a lot brighter? Let's see. Let's go, instead of 30, let's go to 20, a little smaller. Let's make it quite a bit brighter. Let's go to 5. That looks really nice. What happens when we turn these others on? Is it too bright? Let's turn those off. I don't care about those for now. So these guys are way too bright. So let's bring them down to 1.2. Let's just go to 1 for now. So we're missing this front sort of light here. Were we getting that from the ground? I think we just need a single pin in here. Let's put a big square pin, rectangle pin. Make it tall. Take the Y value up. There we go. And I like to take, it looks really, let's go exponential. It looks pretty realistic. And then bring this brightness up to like 3. And then actually, it's still pretty backlit. What if we turn off that top, whoops, that top pin we added? What do we need to do to prioritize this front light? Make sure we place that light. I'm thinking that's a lot better. Let's go ahead and bring that second pin in. Okay, so over top we're a little, maybe a little bright. And the shadow that's being cast forward here is because we've kind of backlit it a little bit. We can bring this pin up toward the ceiling a little bit higher to try to get around that. The problem is, what I was hoping to not do is to lose our top reflection, but actually hitting the shoulder of this form's a little nicer, and it gives us a better shadow down below. I'm liking that a lot more, which is awesome, and it grounds us in the back. So I'm very pleased with how that looks for now. Maybe instead of from edge, I go exponential, and then we pump this up again. So 10. 10, 12. We can take the fall off up a little bit and then go brighter. 20. And then yes, these little white bits are too bright. That's fine. I can go ahead and drop those, make them just a little bit darker. You gotta be careful though, not too much. 80. I think that's pretty good. Now they are, no matter what, going to kind of blend into that background unless we change them to a different color or change our background. Now we do have some shadow back there, so that helps. However, if you want that background color to be white, we can click this again and this little background color under our image style, and that's gonna really help that background look a little bit more white. So again, this is, you know, pretty much an e-commerce shot, and I think it's looking pretty good. I'm not sure there's much I would change. We can go ahead and take some bloom if we want. We can go ahead and bring that up to say 1, this up to like 30. Bring up our threshold. So we're only getting bloom on the, we only want to bloom on the metallic parts. Cut that value in half maybe. So the last thing I'm wondering, I like this, but what if we put a color on the background instead of white? I'll go ahead and just temporarily play with that real quickly. That could work. What about a really... So the reason this is happening, this is a little bit weird. We have an environment background color as well. So check this out. Let's take the same color, save it. Go back in here. It's because our background color, sorry, here we go. Background color is still set to white. So if we go ahead and reuse this, now they're gonna match. To me, that's way too dark of a background. Also our environment, shoot, I should have mentioned this. Go to our background here, set this to 10K. Generate high res for the best results. And then back here, let's dial in this background color. I'm thinking if we have any color, it's got to be some sort of a modern day marketing color. It's either going to be one of these greenish colors, complementing that, or one of these bluish colors. I'm thinking the blue looks a little bit more natural. So because we have a blue, let me find the right blue I want, sorry. Let's actually use the blue from the cable. Take this guy, and let's just do a later version of this. So we're gonna pop in, load this, and then just go way up. And then just desaturate it. So the reason I wanna do this, again, is because the green, in my opinion, this was looking muddy compared to that background. And since we've gone with a lighter blue, now this green that we have on screen is pretty vibrant by comparison. So we can still kind of play with this. We can back that color off just a little bit more if we want. I think that looks a lot better there. Sorry for dragging that out, but you know, the process sometimes just takes fiddling around with. That's part of it. That's how this goes. Right? We can pop these guys up a little bit more now. 82, back where we were. And then in our image tab, we could play with our color if we want. A little bit more saturation. A little bit more vibrance. Denoise, I'll go ahead and set this to 0.3. Get rid of those grainy shadows down there. Firefly filter, just 0.1's fine. That will help with some of the little anisotropic sort of reflections we're getting back in here. I think overall we're looking pretty good. Now, one concern of mine is whether or not this cable pattern's too small. What if I bring this up to 1.5? I think that might look a lot better, especially as this is going to be viewed smaller. This is a small product, by the way, too, actually, so I think that's a bit more appropriate. All right, so I couldn't leave well enough alone, and I just noticed I missed a couple opportunities, so I wanted to record this last segment to say I added one more pin here up front because I thought these two rings were a little dead looking, so I added a little pin, which gives it just a nice highlight. But here's the big thing I totally forgot to do. This is so silly. Oftentimes you don't get that great of shadows in KeyShot without a ground plane, and I forgot to add one. So hit Control-G to add a ground plane, and then double click on it, and you've got a couple options. You can leave it as is, and this gives you some better ground shadows, but what I didn't like was that this color blue was not interacting with our product. And if you take a photo of an object on a blue background, it's going to reflect it. So change your ground material to something like a diffuse, and then we can go ahead and use that bluish color we were using, and things look a little weird, but it's just too bright. So let's go ahead and drop it down. And now you'll notice a couple of interesting things. We get this blue ground plane reflecting in our metals, even interacting to a degree with some of the other materials. So to me, this looks a lot more natural, creates some nice contrast. And if you want to play with it, you can also, you know, make it like a plastic. This will make it a little shinier. You got some reflections now, which is pretty cool. You can leave it like this. Looks like it's on like a glossy plastic background, which I think looks pretty good overall. The white here needs to be a little darker, so I'm going to drop this down to like 80, even a 78 maybe. Maybe even a little lower, 75, because we don't want those to get too bright. I think that looks pretty good there. And then as far as this ground plane, you can play with how shiny you want it, you know, add a little roughness. That'll kill some of that reflection so it's not quite so distracting. Looks a little more natural. Yeah, overall, that's it. I just wanted to add that little bit because I think it was a very important area that I totally blanked on. So I think that does it for today. We're going to go ahead and render out our final image. I'm going to go with a PNG, pretty typical, 2560 by 1440. And since it's not showing the right aspect ratio, see how it's dropped to 1439? Let's go to image, resolution, landscape, 16 by 9. This is just a bug KeyShot's had for years, drives me bonkers. Please fix it. All right, and I think 500 samples will do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. Go ahead, if you've got requests for future tutorials or subjects, just drop them down below in the comments. And until next time, guys, happy rendering.